Hey guys, welcome back. In the last session, we have seen how to use data provider annotation and parameterize. Today, we learn all about listeners in TestNG. So, this is very important topic when you're working with frameworks and also a very important interview question. So, listeners, as the name say, they keep listening to your code. So, you write number of test cases, and when you say listeners concept, what it does is it keeps listening to your test cases and it gets activated when a particular condition is met. So in test case, what all you have, like, if you think of it, a test case can start, a test case will finish, a test case will pass, and a test case will fail. So the best example to remember is, listeners will include the code. For example, if your test case is failing, so as a QA engineer, you need a screenshot for that, right? To get into reports or for you to debug and whatnot. So you will include the screenshot code in the listeners section. So that's always a good point to remember. That's how I remembered when I was learning. So listeners keep listening to your tests and they get activated when a certain condition is met. That's a high level understanding. So let's see practically how we use listeners and how to learn to implement that into your class. For that, before getting into the program, I just want to show you where exactly you can refer all the listeners interfaces. So they get implemented, like TestNG listeners get implemented in the form of interfaces. We already have lot of interfaces that TestNG provided. Each interface has, like all the methods that are supporting. So you just have to plug and play those into your classes. So for that, just go to search for TestNG listeners and go to the official documentation of TestNG, and there it says something called TestNG listeners. So click on that, and here are the interfaces that you already have. So each interface has like set of methods which will be applicable to you. So you can just go over them. The most common interface that we use is iTest listener. So it listens to your tests and it performs certain activities. So for that, let's take an example and see how it works. This is the place where we stopped in the last session, where I created a parameter data provider XML file. So I would copy the same file, XML file, and paste under the project, and I call it as my listener file. So here I have, like the old class which I already created. Let me create new classes which are not depending on the previous example so that it will be clear. So I'll create a new class under the bookings package, and I call it as listener main class. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm doing. So so far I have told you that I'm going to use iTest listener. So I'll just write that interface name here. The interface name is iTest listener that I'm going to use here. So this is my listeners class, and in order for me to implement this or to use this particular interface, there is a keyword called implements. This is a core Java concept, and I'll implement this interface. So I'm letting my class know that I'm going to use this particular interface here. The name of the interface is iTest listener. So it's erroring out. Okay, change it to iTest listener. Okay, oh, it's asking me to import that. I did, and then add unimplemented method. So it is asking me to add all the unimplemented methods. So it means that iTest listener interface already has set of methods which I have not implemented. So where the moment you write this keyword and implement an interface, it default gets all the methods that this interface supports. Now, I know this is a basic Java concept, but I'm just giving you a high level overview of what it does. So I'm implementing this particular interface which already has number of methods. So the error here shows or asks you to get all the unimplemented methods into this class. So you just double click and see what happens. Alright, so here are all the unimplemented methods that are supported by iTest listener. So this is the interface which says iTest listener. So what happens in the test case. A test case can start, a test case will be success, a test case will be failed. So on test start is the name of this particular method. So you have to write the code that you want to include when your test starts. So if you think that your test start will have a particular code that needs to be run, like before your test case starts, usually what happens, like maybe you want to clear your cache before getting your tests, like before your test run. So clearing cache code you will be included in this section. So before every test case starts, it will come here and execute this particular code. These are all self-explanatory. If you check the second one, it says on test success. So whenever your test case is succeeded, that's when you want to execute this particular part of code. Whatever you want, the lines of code, it's like your application specific. You'll include those here. But the exact methods are already getting from the interface. And the next one is failure, test failure. So usually you want to take screenshot. That's what we talked about earlier when we were talking about example, right? So the code that takes screenshot will be here. So whenever your test case fails, come here and take a screenshot. Likewise, you have number of methods that are supported by this interface. So you can use whatever you want. And let's take an example and see how this works. So as of now, what did I do? I just created an XML. I just copied the old XML file, but I didn't change the class name there. I came here and I created a class under bookings called listeners main class. So in this I implemented my iTest listener. I have number of methods that I added here. So let me write a single step here. On test success, I just want to print that my test case passed, right? So whenever my test is success, I know that my test case has passed. In the same way, I'll include one more line here. If my test case is failed, I'll print that my test case failed. So we are implementing the listener interface, and we are overriding the method saying that I want this message when my test case is passed, and I want the my test case failed message when my test case is failed. All right. So now create two classes, like just for our understanding. I'll create a class and I call it as listener class 1 and say finish. Okay, so this is my class, and here I'll just write basic test, like two test cases here. I write public void sys class 1 test case 1, and then okay, why is it all right, I'll write a simple assert statement. So in usual, like in real time, whenever you're working on frameworks, you'll write assert, assertions. You'll add assertions to compare whether your actually is equal to expected or whatnot, right? So I'll write assert as it equals a simple assert statement which has like both actual and expected as strings. So you search, these are all the methods. So just get what you want. So I said I need actual and expected both as strings. Right, I should be somewhere here. Okay, assert equals string actual and string expected. All right. So my actual is high. I can directly pass strings here. My expected is again high. So this is a basic test case that I have written. So in this case, we know that this will definitely pass. Here I just imported the test annotations. So assert equals high and high, which is true, and my test case will be passed. Come to your listener XML file and change the class name. So the class name is package name bookings dot, what is the class that I just created? Listener class 1. All right. So I want my XML file to execute listener class 1, and I also want my XML file to know that I am using listeners here. So for that, what I have to do is I have to let this XML file know that I'm using listeners. I can do that by just adding one step here. So at the suit level, next to suit level, I'll add something called listeners. Just like we add classes, I am telling my XML that I am adding my listener, and my listener class name is, what is the name of the class that we created? Listener main. Listener main is the class name, and this has to be prefixed with my package name, bookings.listener main. So what did we do so far? We have created a listener main class, and we implemented this interface. In this interface, we have implemented all the methods, and we have overridden two methods. One is when my test is successful, print me that my test case passed. When the same way, when my test is failed, print me that my test case is failed. And then we created a class where we wrote a basic test wherein it gets passed, and we are trying to run it from our XML file. In the XML file, we made it clear that we are telling this file that we are implementing listeners, and within the listener, while implementing listeners, we want to execute a class called listeners class 1. Save this and then run this as TestNG suite. Let's see what the output is. Perfect. So if you see the output, it says my test case passed. So from where are we getting? We are getting this from the listeners class. On test success, it is printing me that my test case passed. Alright, so because I don't have any failures, it's just ignoring this. My control did not come to this particular method because I don't have any failures. It only know that one test case passed. Immediately the control went to this particular method, and then it just printed me this. So whenever you want some part of the code to be executed for every test case success, you'll come and include it here. Alright, so for understanding purpose, we have written one test case and we have just printed, which is okay. But in real time, what when you have like hundreds of test cases, if it just says my test case is passed, a generic message, this will not serve your purpose, right? So it should be like more informative. Looking at the result, you should understand what happened at the background. So for that, we can use something like this. So come to your class and just add one more test, and let's forcefully fail it and see what happens. Okay, class 1, I call it as my test case 2, and then I'll include the same assert statement, assert equals which takes actual and expected as strings, just like we did in the previous test. But here I'll give my actual is high, but my expected is hello. So what happens here is definitely high is not equal to hello, and my test case will be failed. So we know that first test case is passed and the second test case is failed. So in this case, when you have two test cases, and when you want more information about your test case from your listeners class, what you can do is you can just append this with your test. So in this case, you know that your test case passed, and you also want to get the test case name. So for that, you just have to say this result is the object which captures all the properties of the result. So just use this object name result dot, it gives all the supporting methods of this particular object. So just hover over this get name. It says that the name of the test result typically identical to the name of the method. In TestNG, methods are nothing but your test cases. So just click on this. So here get the message my test passed, along with that get me the test name also, test case name, which is passed. The same way, say result dot get name. So in this case, even if when your test case is failed, you will print that my test case is failed, and then you will print the name of the test case that is failed. So that will be easy for you to understand what test case is passed and what is failed. So just come to your listeners XML and then try to run the same program here and see the output. Perfect. So if you see the output, it says my test case passed. Which test case is passed here? Class 1 test case 1 is passed, wherein high is equal to hello. And in the next place, it says my test case failed. which test case is failed, class 1 test case 2. So it's very easy for you to go back and check which test case is passed, and debugging is very easy in this case. We can make it more informative, so let's see how we can do that. I just use the same example here. I'll create one more class called as listener class 2. Alright, and here I'll add one more test. Alright, one test case, and I'll call it as class 2 test case 1. This is the test case name, and it's asking me to import TestNG annotations. I did, and here again I'll write a simple assert statement just like we did in the previous examples, and I'll select string actual and then string expected. Alright, and then I'll give, for example, actual is my first name, and then in the expected I'm expecting my last name. So what happens here in this case, definitely my first name is not equal to my last name, so it will error out. This is a test case which will be failed. So I'll just save this, come to your XML file and give the name of this test. So in this way one listener can listen to multiple classes. So the same step, I'll just add one more class. Say class name is equal to, what is the package name is bookings dot, what is the class that I just created, listener class 2. Alright, okay. So I'm telling my XML to add one more class, not only that you implement listeners to this class 1, also use the second class that I just created and implement the listener interface here. So save this and run the program. So you should see two failures here. Alright. So if you see, class 2 test case 1 that we just created is also failed. Okay, so I told you that we can make it more informative, right? So just come back here to this particular listener class, and where it says print test, whenever your test case failed, you are getting the name of the test case, right? Along with the test case name, you can also get the test case class. So use the same result object dot, you'll have something called get test class. So it returns you the class name also. So save it and come back to your XML and try to run and see what happens. So now we are expecting the class names also to be returned, so that it's easy for you to go back and check the test cases. Yes, so test class name is bookings.listener class 1 and bookings.listener class 2. So we are along with printing the message, we are also getting the test case name along with the test case class name here. Alright, so there is one more excellent feature that I want to tell you. So go to the listeners main class and see. You can also get the error message. So for example, error. So whenever a test is failed, you definitely know that there will be some exception, right? So just error message for my test case is, just the same way, use the result object dot, there is a method called get throwable, so it will give you your exception. So just save it and try to run this XML, and once you look at the output, you'll understand its beauty. Perfect. So if you see, in the first case, in the first failed test case, what is the error message? Okay, we got the assertion error. Expected is hello, but what did we find it in the actual is high. So when you look at this, you clearly know what is wrong with this particular test case. So debugging is very easy. And also when you're reporting the test to, like, different broader teams like your business and your developers, if you have a report like this which gives you complete details, it's very very easy. In the same way, in the next case example, your expected is Baru, but I found my first name. So first name is not equal to last name, so it gave me the complete detailed description of my error. So always try to create one listeners class which listens to a number of classes, and then it keeps its duty is to keep listening to all your test cases and get activated whenever a certain condition is met. So try to practice by creating number of classes, and try to trigger that from your XML file. Create one listener class, and as the listener methods are self explanatory, you can add any number of lines of code and practice by yourself. If you have any questions, feel free to add them in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Happy coding, guys. Have a great day. Bye bye.